kind of do. Also, the history of Canadian business, off topic, so I'll be really quick, is just this weird kind of history of companies owning things that they have no business owning. Like, did you know that Hudson Bay Company had an energy subsidiary for like 30 years?
The department store.
The department store had an oil company,
Okay. As one does.
as one does. Like, it was just stupid,
Yeah.
but that's what they did back then.
Yeah. um that's funny. Also, the Bay, I always think is hilarious because it's like this fur trading company, this like exploration, like some of the first settlements in Canada were established by this company that's, 500 years old, and then now they're like a failing department store.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they adapted with the times for 500 years, and it looks like in about year 502 they're going to be just hooped.
Yeah, because they haven't done anything since the internet, basically. They've just, like, let's make department stores. Okay, this is great in the 70s. And then they haven't changed a thing. Like, we have
I
this.
remember,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I remember when they were publicly traded, and this was only a few years ago. I think they went private in like 2019 or 2020. It was a real estate play. It was like, hey, look at all this real estate that the Bay has, and it was like they admitted, like, look, like we're barely profitable as a department store, but we got all this real estate, and they took it private because the guy Richard Baker, I think the guy was basically like, hey, if you're not going to value the company for the real estate, then fine, I'll value it for the real estate. And everyone was like, okay,
So,
take it private, we don't care.
yeah, I have a good tangent about the real estate. We have this iconic Bay building in Winnipeg on like one of our on the corner of Portage Avenue and Broadway, like the major intersection right by our legislative buildings, by our government. There's this iconic 6 floor giant Bay Hudson's Bay building that's been there for over 100 years. They recently put it up for sale, and the highest bid was $1.
Yeah,
Because they needed to do like $100 million of renovations to it to get it like back up to code or whatever. And then it's a heritage building, so you can't just tear it down or whatever. Um, yeah, and it's it's like your real estate company. Sure, you have all this real estate, but what state is this real estate in, right?
I remember reading Hudson Bay's like real estate presentations when at one point they're looking to convert a bunch of these stores into a REIT. And I remember them talking about Winnipeg as this like marquee building. It's like there's so much value in this building. And a few years later, it's worth $1,
Yeah,
which
they had to close
perfect.
off. Like it's completely closed now, but even like 3 4 years ago when it was still open, they had to close off a couple of the floors because like tiles were falling and like it was like collapsing from the inside. So they'd be like, okay, no one can go to floor 3 anymore because it's like pillars are falling on people. Um, but now, as far as I know, it was bought by a like indigenous group who are going to use it for like good stuff. So,
Okay, that's good.
but probably in 35 years when they get permits.
I'm glad that somebody's going to use that building for good because it's I don't know. I think Hudson Bay should, but it's going to zero. It's
Yeah.
only a matter of time.
Yeah, it's which is funny because the second oldest company in Canada is my favorite company, besides Shrugging Dr. Beverage Company and Maple Leaf Rubber Stamp, is the Northwest Company, which is was founded around the same time as Hudson Bay Company, and they're doing extremely well right now. But you know what they did?
One
Focused.
one you and I have talked about many times on the old Twitter app,
Yes.
and I am with you. It's just a fantastically they own these stores in northern Alberta or not northern Alberta, northern Canada, some in the Caribbean, some in kind of like the West Indies of the Pacific. you said, they focus on these small communities where logistics are a challenge, and they know they're going to be the only store in town forever. And it's just a really nice business model. It grows kind of slowly, but it grows, and they're just good operators, and earnings just keep ticking up year after year, almost like clockwork. I regret not buying more. What was that, last summer when it hit like $30 a share?
Yeah, I tweeted that I really like it under 35. It hit 35. I started buying, and then I'm like, I will spend all my money that I have left under 30, and it went under 30. And I think my average is like 27.50 or something, and it's like 45 now. And then good dividend payer as well, 6% I think approximately.
Yeah, yeah. Dividend grows kind of like 4 to 5% a year. It's just a really solid operator, and kudos to you for getting in at the right time.
Yeah,
It's
that
like
was
that's something I plan to hold forever.
yeah, I think me too. Unless they make some major change or like maybe cut the dividend to zero, but even then it's like I really believe in that company. I have friends that have family that like are in the company and executives. Won't get any more detailed than that, but I know how this company works from the inside. They do a lot of good work here in my province, in the north part of my province, and I've seen them operate, and I really like the company. But
One thing
yeah,
was gonna say one thing I was really impressed with was last summer when the stock was struggling, they came out with numbers, and the numbers were a little disappointing. And the CEO in the conference call said, "Look, like we're the only store in these communities. We understand that our customers are feeling the inflation pinch, maybe even more than kind of the average person in like a Toronto or Vancouver or whatever. We're delaying these price increases because we think it'll give us goodwill towards our customers. It will last for years to come." And I really thought that that was just the smartest thing to do and the smartest thing to say, and to kind of show their customers and the communities that they operate in, where it's like, look, we're not here to exploit anyone. We're not here to charge the highest prices that we can. Because anyone who's done any research or been up north know how expensive food is up there. Any kind of small thing they can do to give their customers a little bit more of a break was appreciated, and it just adds to the customer loyalty over time.
yeah, no, I agree. I think great management team. I think they're so well positioned for Canada, that whole northern region expanding as well, because it's
Mhm.
had a very flat population for a long time. No one wants to go up there. It's minus 75 degrees. Um, and but there's recently and very soon in the future there's going to be a lot of development up there. Like they're talking about building more ports up there where they can get stuff shipped in. They're talking about building rail. They're talking about like China's bought a bunch of land in like Rankin Inlet, and they're planning on building a bunch of uh, like an ocean port for whatever reason. Also, the Canadian government keeps just selling them land in northern Canada, and that's that's a complete another conversation for another day. But whether you think that's good or what they're planning, but like there's a lot of stuff I think in the next even 30 years that it's going to be developing up there. And maybe even with climate change the population is going to get forced a little bit north. Um, and who has the vehicles and the planes and the rail and the distribution chains to do all this? Northwest Company is the only company that's positioned in these places to do it. There's places I've heard these stories where the government doesn't have the ability to get up to places or do these stuff, so they're contracting Northwest Company
Mhm.
because they can't do it themselves. And that
Yeah,
kind of reliance, where like it's the opposite of what I have with my public liquor here in Manitoba, where I rely so much on the government. When the government's relying on you, that's a good position to be as a company, I think.
that's it. The other thing I'd mention is my understanding is the North is very high in certain kind of natural resources. There's a big gold mine and none of it. Um, these resources kind of will become more and more important as time sort of ticks on, and these mines will be developed. And when they are, companies like Northwest Company get that residual kind of bump to their profits.
Yeah, yeah. Like, and there's I'll just stay facts driven because this gets a little bit political, but there's been some big water settlements and like displacement settlements with indigenous uh, reserves up there, where they're getting a lot of money thrown in the community from government settlements because they didn't have clean water or they kicked them off their land, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not giving any opinion on that at all. That's just what is happening and what has happened, and that money's goes somewhere, right? And
Exactly.
if you're running the stores and you're like, that's just an objective, the money gets spent somewhere. People spend money. So if they're the only stores there, what are we doing? What are we talking about?
Yeah, exactly. There's all sorts of benefits to being the only store in town, and if your population gets richer, gets more money for whatever reason, they're going to spend at least some of it at the store.
Yeah. And then I thought that was super interesting too when I learned about all their Caribbean stuff. Because I'm like, how does that make any sense? But then I'm like, oh wait, they're experts at getting stuff where it's hard to get stuff. They're great at that. They've built these great supply chains. Yeah, I guess some weird foreign like tiny island with no uh, airstrip is basically as hard to get to as northern Canada. So
That's it,
sure,
right? Yeah.
like yeah. So that was an interesting, and it's diversity as well, right?
It's the same problem, just in a different spot. And these guys are experts at it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, let's wrap this up by rolling it back to A&W. I'll probably cut that and make it its own little clip about Northwest Company, but.